So now we're going to take a look at editing a pattern and also the recording modes. So let's jump over to a fresh pattern, and what I'm going to do is just load that kit up that we had before. So I'm going to go O2, load that up, and then you can hear we've got these different sounds which we can now sequence. So what I'm going to do first is press track and then go to 1. Or if you're not in a recording mode, you can audition a sound like that and also select the track as well. If you are already playing a pattern and you don't want to disrupt that by hitting these trigs, or if maybe you're in recording mode, you can hold track down and press the track. So first thing that we want to do is go into grid recording mode. This is the recording mode that you will use pretty much all the time. We have got live recording mode and step recording mode as well, with some different options in there. But this is one I tend to use quite a lot. So what we can do on here is basically just put in trigs on the sequencer. We're going to stick to a 16-note sequence for now, and I'll show you how we can expand sequences later on. So let's say if we want to do like a 4/4 kick, I can press 1, 5, 9, 13, and we've got these red trigs. Let's put a fill in. Let's maybe go for an electro pattern. And let's go to track 2 now and add a snare. Let's see what's on 3. And let's go to 6 because I know I've got some hats on there. And I don't know what I've got on the other one, so let's go for that. Oh, that's a loop, that one. Let's try that. Let's get rid of that for now. Yeah, so basically we've got these red trigs, very simple. You basically just put them down. But we do also have an option to add yellow trigs as well. So yellow trigs are just lock trigs. And then what happens if I put these in, if you have a listen, they won't actually initialize the preset sound. So that's on the kick, and there's no extra kicks in there. If I turn them red, then you can hear them. But what these are for is basically, so you can basically add parameter locks to them and different changes, but it won't affect the actual sound. It won't push the sound out. So I'll just quickly talk about parameter locks just briefly. We're going to cover this very extensively later. But let's say on this snare, or this clap, what I want to do is on the second time it comes in, I want to add loads of reverb. So I'll just hold it down, go to the reverb, the effects page, and bring up the reverb like this. Maybe turn delay up as well. But let's say if I want to add a trigless trig or a lock trig, what I can do is hold the function button and put some in there. And then maybe these 3, I'll hold them down. So you can actually select multiple trigs at once as well and affect all of them. Maybe I want to add some bit reduction in. Maybe we change it for each one. Add some chorus. And it's not actually adding a trig, because if I copy that one and take that out, there's no sound there. So what we've got is a sound which is the usual sound, which is quite dry, apart from we've added some reverb and extra delay to it. But the tail of it gets affected with bit reduction and sample rate reduction. The other thing I want to talk about as well is copying and pasting trigs. So we can just copy a trig like this, and then we can just paste that around like so. The other thing that you can do as well is you can copy the whole trig data by holding function and pressing the record button once you're in grid recording mode. I can now go to any of the other tracks, maybe that one. Let's just go to that track. And then once I'm in grid recording mode, I can press function and paste. And then if we play that, but for some reason, I came out of that pattern. So let me just do that again. So let's go in there again. Let's turn the snare off. So you can hear what I've done is I've copied the data from this track and pasted it on that one. Not just the trigs, but also the trig data as well, like what it's rooted to. So it's quite a cool way of just copying stuff over to different tracks and testing different sounds out. So the other one that we've got is record plus play. Will get you into live recording mode. And then what I can do is, it's all kind of out of timing, and I did that on purpose because we've got unquantized mode, but then if you press it again, you get quantized mode. So let's just clear what we just did, and now I can tap it in. And for some reason that didn't work, so let me just go back again. Quantized mode's on now. There we go. So that's in time now. And the other cool thing about being in this mode, so I don't often punch stuff in, I normally do that on the sequencer. But the other cool thing about being in that mode is that you're also able to do some automation changes live, which is why we've got quantized and unquantized. Quantized will snap it to grid, unquantized means that it's unquantized. But if we go into, say, like the hats, what I could do is make the hats really short and then go back into the quantized grid recording mode. Now, how much more interesting does that sound? Quite quickly, let's have a look at the kick. Let's add some snare reverb. So there's two modes that we're going to look at in jump mode, and we can access them by holding record down and pressing stop. We've got jump mode and we've got standard mode. First of all, we're going to look at standard mode. So you just keep hold of the record button and you can jump between those two. So what is step recording mode? It's just a different way of inputting trigs. And the way you do it is you basically hit a trig or a track, depending on which of these two buttons you press, and it just adds notes or trigs consecutively. I'm going to show you how to do the trig way first, which is quite interesting. So if you hold function down, what you can do is you can basically add in any of the tracks like this. It's going to sound very silly, this, but you notice how the green goes across, so it moves across, then you put one in, it moves across, you put one in. It sounds like this. So a bit silly. Let me just come back out of that and just clear the sequence again. So let's go back in standard mode. You can also, while you're on this and you're not holding down function, you can select any of the trigs like this as a starting point. You can also move left and right using the arrow keys. If we start on 1, what we can do is use it in a way that I would probably use it, and that is to use it for inputting notes. So I'm going to use track 1. I'll just come out of it, I'll show you what track 1 sounds like. Just a synth sound, a bass sound from the factory sounds. And then what I'm going to do is go into jump mode, standard. And then what you do is if you hold the keyboard down, once you've selected which trig you would like to start on, we're going to start on 1. Hold this down, and then what we can do is we can input notes like this. That was a bit of a bum note, but it doesn't matter. Right, so it's quite good because what you could do is, remember with the keyboard mode, if you go into it, you can also set a scale as well. So that is an option, and then I wouldn't have made a bum note. So it's a really easy way to make music. Bum note sounds all right, actually. While we're in this as well, we can always go in and add trig parameter locks as well. So while we're still in jump mode, I can go in, add some chorus and reverb to some of these, delay. So So yeah, quite cool stuff. You can still access all that while you're in there. Let's get rid of that again. Come out keyboard mode. And then next what I'm going to do is just go back into it again, but also show you how we can add rests or ties. So what you do is basically hold down the keyboard again. What we can do is we can hit no to skip a note, basically like this. Skip 3, add 1 on 4, and then maybe we'll go skip again. Skip 1, skip 1, and then maybe we'll go F. So that's a bit more usable. Let's just bring that filter down. Let's just add some parameter locks. Some locks for the decays as well. Don't forget, while we're in this mode, we can always jump back to live recording quantized mode. And when you combine the different modes, it becomes very useful, because we've gone from initial mode, which was step recording mode, then we've jumped to live recording mode to just add some really quick changes to the sound. So we've come up with something pretty fast there. And then don't forget, you can always go back into grid recording mode for some more detailed editing. So we could go in here and maybe boost this one an octave. And we can add some portamento as well. So we'll come on to all of this stuff later on as well. So yeah, we can use all 3 modes there. So let's just finish off by taking a look at the jump mode, which is just another mode of step recording. So basically it gets that by pressing that button. So the way this one works is we use on the trig page, we've got this length parameter, and that basically allows us to change the length of a note. And usually when I'm in recording mode, in grid recording mode, I will do it like this. So let's say if we've got a sequence where we do a C, and then on the next one we do, say, a D sharp, and then we do a C again, and then we do a D like this. See how that sounds? So if the length is down, this will happen. Let me just change the amp settings. Then if we turn the length up, we allow more of the notes to come through. So what I tend to do normally is I put in the note length amount. So this is a quarter, so it's 4 notes. And then that one is 6, so then I would go up to 6. A little bit tedious the way it works, but that's how I would do it. You notice them two are still on 1. So that's how I do it in grid recording mode. In the jump mode, it's quite interesting because we add that functionality into what we was doing before. So if we put this at 1/16 now, if I put in a note, it will do a note like this, so like a C, and it will jump a 16th. If I then change this to 3, and then we put in another note, so if we go D sharp, you'll see it's jumped all the way to 5 now. And then what I'm going to do is put it to 2. I'm going to put in 2 more notes, so we're going to go D sharp, D, and now we're on 9. Let's jump all the way up now to 13. So if I put a jump of 4 on, and then put in a C again, maybe we'll do a high one. This sequence is probably going to sound awful, by the way. And then if we go 1, and we just put in 4 notes for the end. So let's just go. There we go. Let's have a listen to that now. Awful. But you get the idea. It's a mode that I don't often use, but some of you might find that quite useful. It's quite handy as well if you're using an external MIDI keyboard. But to be honest, I much prefer going into the live recording mode, quantized, even if I'm using an external MIDI controller, like if I'm using the pads on the Hydrosynth, and I like to just kind of bash the notes in. What I mean by that is if we go into the like quantized mode, bring up the keyboard. This is if I've got a kick playing, or say a metronome. Let's put metronome on. Turn it up. I would do it like this. And that's kind of how I would do it. And that was just really quick and easy. But then I've still got to contend with putting the note lengths in. So that's kind of where the jump mode works really, really well. I would say the jump mode works really well if you're wanting to create like a longer sequence bass, then you can do it like this, watch. So if we go extend this pattern length up to 64, then we go into jump mode. And let's say if I want to change the length to 16ths, what I can do then is I can go into the keyboard mode and I can go C, G, D sharp, F. Now listen to it. So we're actually, the sound is cutting out, and that's because the sample's not long enough. So if you look at the sample, the first one is, but the higher we go, the faster the sample plays. Because we're not using an oscillator, we're using samples. So that second one is quite high, so it runs out of sample length. So if the sample was a bit longer, we'd get more on that. If I bring it down, let me, let's do it again, right? So let's clear that. And then let's go into jump mode again. And yeah, we want to leave it where it was on 16ths. This time what I want to do though is I want to come down an octave. So that'll play for the full length now because it's running a lot slower on the sample. So before we move on, I've got a couple of extra things to cover. So there is another little function that I didn't cover earlier. So if we are in the jump step recording mode, there is another little trick you can do as well. So if we hold the keyboard down, but we also hold yes down, instead of having to mess around with the length there, what we can actually do is hold the notes down for a set period of time. So if I just tap these, you can see I've just added 3 1/16th notes. But then if I go to another note and hold it down for a little bit, you can see it's jumped all the way to 12 now. And then if I do it again, let's have a listen to that. A little bit weird, but you get the idea. So you can basically set the length by just holding the note as long as you're pressing yes. There's a couple of other things to talk about as well, such as using an external MIDI controller. I'll probably cover this later in the course as well, when I start to include, say, the HydroSims keybed. I don't actually have a keyboard in the studio. I just prefer to use these, or just dial in sequences, but we can use that because it's velocity sensitive. It does loads of other stuff as well. I'll use that for the demonstration. But just a quick note on that while we're in jump mode. If you use an external MIDI controller, you must set it to send the MIDI data on the Digitakt 2's defined auto channel. So you do that by going into MIDI config, channels, you've got the auto channel there. What MIDI channel do you want that to be on? So you could set it to, like, say 10, and then it means that if your keyboard's also set to 10, what happens is when you change the track, your keyboard will affect that channel. If you just want a keyboard to only affect, say, channel 1, then what you do is just set it to channel 1 and you set that track to channel 1. It won't affect any of the other channels. But the auto channel is there for that reason. It's really good. The other thing I want to say about using an external keyboard is when you use an external keyboard, the velocities here, which will control volume, they will change with the pressure of the key presses. So if you like tap it really fast and hard, then you're going to get big velocity, and if you just softly press the key, it's going to be low. So you're going to get these kind of changes in velocity. If you want to override that, what you can do is hold function while you're playing your keyboard, and it won't record in the velocity changes. So the other cool thing with velocity, we'll cover this later, is if we go into setup, you can also turn off velocity to volume anyway completely for this track. So you can do it like that, and then you don't have to hold function. And then you can also go down to the velocity mod, and if you want, you could set these to be things like amp decay, reverb, filter. So the filter opens up, you can set them and you can set the amounts there. And then when you hit the keys, if you hit it hard, those parameters will jump up, and if you hit it soft, they won't jump as much. So again, we'll cover that later on, but I just thought I'd mention that now while we're here. So that's pretty much it for the step recording modes, and also the other recording modes that we just covered as well.